Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
NEMA officials update the missing persons numbers.
A confusing process as hundreds of displaced Grand Bahama and Abaco residents try to register their kids for school.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Joaquin. The number of people registered as missing after Hurricane Dorian has dropped from 2,500 to 1,300. The updated figure is a sharp decline from what was reported by NEMA officials yesterday. Meanwhile, the death toll has not budged from 50 in days. Jasmine Brown reports.
While officials reported today that the number of registered missing persons has declined, they say the death toll remains the same. The new missing persons numbers were released during NEMA's daily press conference on Thursday morning. NEMA spokesperson Carl Smith.
We are happy to announce that the number of missing persons registered with the government is going down daily.
The new numbers came one day after Smith said roughly 2,500 people were registered as missing. Today, Smith said NEMA had checked the government's list against the lists of evacuees and people staying in shelters on New Providence. It resulted in that list being cut down by 48%.
After cross-referencing these databases, the registered persons who have evacuated the islands are now at 1,300 persons, and this is down from the 2,500 persons that I reported yesterday.
As it relates to shelters, Smith says the numbers remain the same, with just over 2,000 people being housed in shelters across New Providence. What has also remained constant is the official death toll from Dorian. On Wednesday, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham said that based on information he has, hundreds of people were killed on Abaco. However, Police Commissioner Anthony Ferguson insisted on Thursday that the death toll remains at 50.
We have never said that it's going to be quick. And I say again, this process is going to be very slow because we want to make sure that whatever is there, we want to make sure we recover it. The landmass is vast, and the teams are there, and the teams are committed.
Ferguson added that while many are focused on the death toll, the Royal Bahamas Police Force is doing more than counting bodies. It is also keeping Abaco and Grand Bahama safe. He says just this week they arrested 2 people in Marsh Harbor on gun charges. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
The government must remove the red tape in order to accommodate the overwhelming help from local and international partners, according to Prime Minister Dr. Hubert MINNIS, who delivered a national address last night to update Bahamians on recovery and relief efforts in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian.
I understand the deep frustration of those who have had to deal with bureaucratic roadblocks. We are aggressively shredding the red tape that is frustrating many who want to help. We are fixing these problems and bringing in extra personnel and capacity to direct the aid from private citizens, corporate donors, international agencies, and foreign governments.
MINNIS said as a part of recovery efforts, he appointed Permanent Secretary Jack Thompson and former Chairman of the National Insurance Board, Algernon Cargill, to head the hurricane relief and redevelopment efforts on Abaco. He said Senate President Kay Forbes Smith will lead the effort on Grand Bahama. MINNIS said he met with members of the Christian Council and asked them to plan a national prayer service and a day of mourning.
The road to recovery and healing will be long and hard. I met with the Bahamas Christian Council to provide them with an overview of Hurricane Dorian's impact on Abaco and Grand Bahama. I have asked the Christian Council to plan a national prayer service. We will also have a national day of mourning. We will need as many spiritual resources as we will need physical resources to rebuild lives and to recover.
MINNIS did not update the death toll. He reaffirmed that as of September 9th, 50 people were confirmed dead as a result of the storm.
We will first and foremost put the priority on notifying families and giving them the help they need to grieve. We are ramping up efforts to collect those who died in the storm. We are being transparent and responsible in this process. The government is providing counseling to those who need someone to help them go through this difficult process.
Well, dozens of displaced parents turned up at the National Stadium this morning to register their children for school, only to be turned around. Jared Higgs reports.
Education officials are calling it a breakdown in communication. They insist that the message that they sent out was that only people staying in shelters would be registered on Thursday morning. However, many other displaced residents say that's not the memo that they got. One of those displaced and displeased residents is LATOYA Cooper, a mother of 4 children. She says her family hiked a ride from eastern New Providence in order to get to registration on time. She says it was ultimately a waste of time.
The process, as far as I'm concerned, is sending out false news to the people. We came all the way here from Elizabeth Estate, and to come to find out, they're telling us that they're only assisting the persons that are in the shelters today, which that was not what the bulletins or the messages that were sent out said.
Cooper's cry was echoed by several other parents that Our News spoke with.
Our impressions was we thought we were coming down here to register them in school, not just to take the name, because they already take our names in 3 different locations, and names and numbers. So we just want to get our kids in school so we could get back to work and get started to rebuild our lives.
There's just so much stupidness, like the up and down, the process, everything.
Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Valerie GAITOR, says an initial communication sent out by the ministry specified that Thursday's exercise was only for parents of children living in shelters. However, she admits something went wrong.
We understand that there was a breakdown in communication somewhere, okay? But we're here to try and correct that.
GAITOR says the registration process is a thorough one, involving health screenings, contact with educational officials, as well as a stop at social services. And with an estimated 9,000 students expected to register, she predicts that registration will last into mid-October.
Our numbers tell us that there are about over 9,000 students in schools in Abaco, in public schools in Abaco and Grand Bahama. So it's impossible for us to try and register 9,000 students in one day. It's an ongoing exercise.
However, these storm victims may not have patience in abundance.
It's hard, and then it's like, we've been to the school and everything, so they sent us here, and they say they dealing with some shelter people at the time, and then some private people private home and stuff, and they give us a call or whatever. So I say, well, just put us on another island, so we can go through this.
Now I'm going to try, I have to leave from here. I reach here early enough this morning to get here. Now I'm going to try to have the hike to go to each child's school, because I have 3 different schools I need to go to in Nassau. You understand what I'm saying? And it's not easy.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
Just over a month after moving to Abaco, 2 physicians tonight are reliving their terrifying experience of enduring Hurricane Dorian.
Once we heard those droppers land on the compound, and we saw the U.S. Coast Guard come in and said, we're here to help, we need your most critical patients, we're ready to fly them out now. It was like, God is good.
For doctors Nadia Holder-Hamilton and William Hamilton, seeing the lights from the U.S. Coast Guard was the best feeling ever after enduring 2 long days of tending to hundreds of patients during Hurricane Dorian. The 2 doctors made it through the Category 5 storm in Marsh Harbor Healthcare Center, one of the only buildings left intact. According to the doctors, during the passage of Dorian, they had to tend to those who came in with severed limbs, the traumatized, and deal with the hard task of just keeping people alive.
Communication was basically nothing at that point, and so we were in it alone, essentially, and it was scary. So seeing them, I remember one of my colleagues actually described it as the piercing blue eyes of the first U.S. Coast Guard. It just pierced our hearts because we were like, thank God someone is here, and because you could have felt alone, right? Because you didn't know what was happening, you didn't know what was happening with the storm, you didn't know if it was moving. You just knew that you were under what felt like hurricane conditions for days.
Thankfully, the doctors say no one died under their watch in the clinic during that time. But an interesting part of this story, These two physicians were not scheduled to work during the storm. They went there after realizing they weren't safe at home, and they ended up joining the two other physicians on duty and became one half of a 4-doctor team, assisted by nurses and other staff tending to a packed clinic of people pleading for help.
At that point in time, it was just to keep everybody's morale up as best as possible, even though many would have lost almost everything. People came with just the clothing on their backs. Some people lost loved ones. Some people had to swim to the clinic.
As the recovery efforts continue on Abaco, the physicians don't see themselves returning to the island right now. However, they've joined relief efforts and encourage many others to help.
We just would want that people don't cease to give, because there's so many people out there that really need every single thing. They left with nothing. Some left without their kids, without their families. Could you truly imagine that? They have absolutely nothing.
The heads of several foreign aid organizations who have been assisting the Bahamas during Dorian's aftermath are dismissing concerns that hurricane relief supplies are not being properly managed and distributed. Senior Regional Advisor for the United States Agency for International Development, Tim Callaghan, says their group has a good handle on where the supplies are going.
So we have teams on the ground that are tracking the materials that we've brought in and have donated, that they're going to where they need to go, and we will continue to do that.
That was echoed by Nate Mook, who is the Executive Director of World Central Kitchen.
We've been bringing in, as I mentioned, about a million pounds now on our boat from Florida. NEMA worked very quickly to establish a protocol for manifests for goods coming in, and I think as long as the international organizations are working closely with NEMA and following the protocols and making sure the proper authorities are notified and working with the Port Authority, especially specifically talking about Grand Bahama, things have been going very smoothly. We haven't had any problems.
Still to come, what a former prime minister thinks of mandatory evacuation legislation. Plus, Four Seasons Resort feeds Abaco evacuees. Stay tuned.